الشيطان اللعين الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله الذي لا يبلغ مدحته القائلون ولا يحصي نعماه العادون ولا يؤدي حقه المجتهدون الذي بعد فلا يرى وقربا فشهد النجوى تبارك وتعالى والصلاة والسلام على سيد الأنبياء وخاتم المرسلين وشفيع المذنبين سيدنا ونبينا بالقاسم محمد وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين الذين أذهب الله عنهم الرجس وطهرهم تطهيرا. واللعنة الدائمة الباقية لأعدائهم ومنكر فضائلهم وغاصب حقوقهم من الآن إلى قيام يوم الدين. أما بعد، فقد قال الله سبحانه وتعالى في كتابه الكريم: إن الدين عند الله الإسلام. صلوات. In observing the Azhar of Sayyid al-Shuhada, Alhamdulillah, this is the 7th evening, and with the barakat of Imam Hussain alayhi salam, we have been looking at the issue of relevance of Islam for us in the western part of the world in the 21st century, and the way how we can actually make Islam relevant to us is by studying the process of continuity and change. Because Islam is a world religion, it was not for one time or one place. And being a universal religion, it has this ability that it can emerge in different cultural contexts and still maintain its fundamental values and the belief system. In this process, we basically started the discussion first about i'tiqadat. So when it comes to the system of belief, there is no room for change there. Allah was one 1400 years ago, He is one now, He will be one till the day of Qiyamah and after. He will not become three with the passage of time. When we talk about the concept of Quran being Kalam of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and the Prophet being the last one, that is not going to change with the passage of time or change in location of the Muslims. But then we looked at the second part of the area of discussion, and that's ibadat. And that's where we see a mixture of continuity and change, where there is more continuity in the rituals, but also aspects of change depending on, how we implement the Sharia laws in a given situation. But the discussion that we have, focusing more on that area, and that is the muamalat, which means the lifestyle, the culture, and the way of life that we have. And this is where we see that almost, when you talk about continuity and change, it works hand in hand. To understand this phenomenon, we started with a discussion about hijrat and migration. Then we went on to the example of hijab, just to identify the constant value in hijab and the variable way of implementing that in different parts of the world, in different stages of human history. And our discussion basically reached to the point where we were discussing last night about the modern situation here. That now that we have settled down as a Shia Muslim community in the western part of the world, there is a need for us to make sure that when we build the new context for a Shia Muslim culture in the West, we have to look at the society itself. We have to study the West, look at what is positive, what is negative, so that we can steer the vehicle of change in the positive direction and avoid the pitfalls when we talk about change in our community. Last night I focused on this issue of modernity itself, and ended with the discussion whether, reformation is to be done in the religion or in the community. Is it the religion which needs to be reformed, or is it the ummah which needs to be reformed? And to continue that discussion, inshallah, tonight, we'll focus on this issue, because last night I mentioned that when we look at the modern society, there are 3 areas of, challenges that we have. We have to deal with it. We cannot say just because we have come here and these are the realities of time, we have to accept it. No, there are 3 areas of problem. The first one, the issue of rebellion against tradition, the issue of generation gap that we discussed last night. Tonight I would like to talk about 2 more problem areas, and to see how we look at it and how we have to be vigilant when we are faced with those kinds of situations. I don't mean to say that everything in the West is negative. Otherwise, I wouldn't be here for almost 30 years. Inshallah, tomorrow and then day after, we will be talking about 2 positive elements of the modern Western culture and society, and how we can, benefit from those positive aspects. Salawat on it. As far as the problems associated with the issue of modernity, first was this issue of rebellion against the tradition. And as I said, this issue of generation gap is a new phenomenon. It didn't exist before. And this is something that we see, and there are many reasons for it. This is not the time really to discuss that in detail. But the 2 other problems that we have, can I request the brothers from that entrance area to move here? I think the sign is saying don't sit there. There's a lot of space here. Bismillah. The second issue that I would like to talk about is one of the, hallmarks of the modern Western society. And that is this phenomenon, which is a modern phenomenon, known as sexual revolution, that this society has gone through. And it's in line with this rebellion against the tradition, where they have turned away from their religious and traditional values in this matter, and basically gone towards the extreme of total liberty. Individuals are free to do whatever they want. They cannot be forced. As long as there is no force, there is willingness from both sides, there is no problem. This is not just a simple matter. In the past, human beings used to replace God with an idol. But the modern society, the human being has replaced himself with God. He has become, the nafs has become the God. There is an ayat in the Quran, very interesting, and I didn't understand its meaning until when I started to look at the modern phenomenon. أَرَأَيْتَ مَنِ اتَّخَذَ إِلَهُ هَوَاهُ. The Prophet says to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to the Prophet, have you seen a person who takes his own hawa, his own desires as his God? On a personal level, yes, this was understandable even from the days of the early days of human history. But as a social phenomenon, this is actually a byproduct of the modern society and its sexual revolution, where a human being has taken the place of God. I will decide what I like, that is allowed. What I don't like, there is nobody there basically making that judgment. And the impact of sexual revolution in the Western society is not only on the society. It has its impact on the religious institutions of the West. Even the Christian churches. Especially if you look at the Anglican Church in Canada, that's the majority. If you look at the transformation which has taken place, because of the sexual revolution, even the Anglican Church has basically modified and changed the definition of marriage. It's no more the issue of, the marriages between Adam and Eve. There is the marriage between Adam and Steve also. In Ontario, I am authorized to sign on the marriage license. And in the few, early years, in the 90s, the forms were very interesting. The long forms. On one column it says bride and the details of the bride. On the other column it says groom. Then the laws changed. New forms were published. And I started looking at it, and people are coming with new marriage licenses where it says applicant and co-applicant. We don't know who is who. There's no more issue of bride and groom, applicant and co-applicant. It could be anyone. And this is where we realize that, what was considered to be sinful in the Bible, now the Anglican Church says it's okay. Why? Because the people like it. Instead of leading the society, the church is being led by the dictates of masses. And this is one of the serious implications of what is known as sexual revolution in this part of the world. If I use the Islamic terminology for that phenomena, what was ma'roof has become munkar. And what was munkar has become ma'roof. This is the example where I was mentioning last night, that yes, reformation has to come. There is a need for islah. Not islah of the deen, but of the community. In the case of the Christian society and the impact of sexual revolution here, the reformation has happened in the faith itself and not in the community. And this is something we have to look at it. Of course, I must mention the positive side also, that although the Anglican Church is on this side, the Protestants, but when you look at the Catholic Church, I really admire their stand on this issue. They have not given in to the pressure of their own masses as well as the political lobbies, especially here in U.S. and Canada. And the Catholics, popes have been very firm on this issue, and I appreciate that. The religion has to lead the people and not be led by the dictates of the people. You will see the same divide even in the Anglican Church between West and East. Every 10 years, Anglican Church have a global gathering, and you will see this issue is debated, and you will see the Anglican bishops and archbishops from Canada and U.S. and England would be on one side saying, oh, times have changed, we have to accommodate these changes. But you will see that the religious leaders of the Anglican Church from the African continent, from Middle East and Asia, they are very strong in saying what the Bible considers to be sinful is sinful even now. So this is where we see the impact of the sexual revolution in the West. Has its own negative impact on a religious body. I don't worry about next generation of our community converting to our other religions. I don't think, somebody who has been told he cannot bow down to a fellow human being or a physical object will ever become, another worshiper. But we have to look at this phenomenon in the West and see that this change and this danger can creep in when we talk about this issue that, people want the rulings to be modified according to their like and dislike. And that is a path which is really very dangerous. Of course, there is a lot of flexibility in Sharia laws, but when we talk about fundamental values, they will always be the same no matter we live in the East or the West, in the 7th century or the 21st century. Salawat. I said many times in Toronto that I really respect those who say, well, I know Islam says this is haram, but I like it, and I do it. Compared to somebody who says, well, I know Islam says this is haram, and I would like you to make it halal. You don't play with the religion. You have a problem, yes, you have a problem. You have a weakness. But don't ask the religion to be changed for your sake. Allama Iqbal in some ways was a person ahead of his time where he says, "Khud badalte nahi Quran ko badal dete hain." You don't change the Quran, change yourself according to the Quran. Don't try to twist the Quran according to your own liking. हुए किस दर्जा फ़क़ीहान हरम बेतौफ़ी। तो बात कुरान को बदलने की नहीं है, शरीयत को बदलने की नहीं है, इस्लाम को बदलने की नहीं है, बात अपने को बदलने की है, अपने इस्लाह की है। सलावत। Of course, there is a need for us to look at Islam itself. Many times we take many things for granted. There are filters of cultural values which have come between us and Islam, and we need to look at it in order to understand what are the true Islamic values and identify what are the constant values and what are the variables in that. When it comes to the issue of, human relationship between husband and wife, for example, these things are nothing modern or ancient. Human beings have existed from day one. The fitrat and the nature that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created has been there from day one. Ayat of Quran are clear about it. Just because we have now moved 1400 years from the Quran, from the time the Quran was revealed, it doesn't mean that the relationship within the family changes with the passage of time. Husband-wife relationship was same, and it's still now. Quran has some very beautiful descriptions about it, which will never become obsolete and outdated. If you look at the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, uses very simple terms, doesn't go into, psychological terminologies. Hunna libasun lakum wa antum libasun lahunna. Simple words. Allah says to the husbands, you are libas and garments for your wives, and to the wives it says, you are garments for your husbands. Look at the simple usage of the word libas. What does it mean? The libas actually, helps us in dealing with the extremities of the weather. The libas helps us in making ourselves more presentable to others in the society. It's a basis of zinat and beauty for us. And the libas also conceals our inner defects and weaknesses. And when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to the husband and wife, you are libas for one another, all these three aspects come in. That they are source of beauty for one another. They help one another in extreme situations, in difficult situations, and they conceal the weaknesses of one another and help one another to become better human beings. This phenomenon was there before Islam, when Islam came, and is still valid now. Passage of time is not going to change that reality. And so when we look at this issue of sexual revolution and its impact in the modern society, we have to realize that this is an area of problem where we have to be vigilant about it, that it does not creep into our faith in a very modified way. Salawat. Although these are not that serious issue, but if you look at the issue of dress style, hairstyle, and sexual behavior in a way, these are all part of this rebellious, nature against the traditions of the forefathers. Sometimes we get these questions from the youths, many of them. And my approach would be that we cannot always answer the question by saying it's halal or haram. They say the Maulana, is tattoo halal or not? They talk about tongue piercing or sometimes piercing the belly button. Can I do that? Is there a problem in the Sharia? The issue is not that this is okay or not. I think sometimes we have to talk with our own children and, answer that by a question, why you want to do it. There are many things which are mubah and halal, in Sharia. But the more serious question is why you want to do it. What is the purpose for that? And what is, well, they'll say, I want to fit in. Then the following question comes in. Fit in with what? Is this fitting in with the path that you are getting closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? The Rasul and the Imam of the time is becoming more pleased with you? Or is it something else? If you just send a question to the Maharaj's office, of course you'll get a very simple, very technical, legal answer, a yes and no. But these issues are not just simple acts that people do. There are cultural, backgrounds behind it that we have to think about it. Especially, we live in this society, we know. And so we have to help them, to get away from this kinds of situation, which might not be haram. But it has far-reaching implications about the way of, looking at things. Fitting in. This is the whole issue of peer pressure. And this is how they have to learn to resist that. Because today they are resisting what is halal in a way, but tomorrow the situation would be worse. Issues of haram will come in. And this is where you build up that resistance against, temptation to commit sin. Salawat alayhi. A very interesting example given by an Afro-American convert. He's a very good, motivational speaker in U.S. And he was talking something which looks very innocent. But then you look at the origin of that, and then you start, question whether we should allow our children to do that or not. It's not only in U.S., even in Canada, some of these youths in their high schools, especially if you are waiting for your kid outside the high school. We're not talking about Islamic schools, we are talking about public schools. You will see these baggy pants that they wear, the boys. And sometimes it is such that it looks as if, it's going to just fall down. And you start thinking, what is the problem? Is it the wrong size of pants that he has bought? Is it bigger than the size? And with that, you will see even the walking style is different. The feet are a little bit, far apart when they walk. And you think about it. It's considered to be fashion. By the looks of it, it's nothing serious. You say, well, we are in the West, this is the Western culture, the teens do this. But then you go and learn from somebody who has lived, who was born in the society, who lived in that environment of the Afro-Americans. He was saying that if you think about it, this is actually the fashion adapted by the ex-convicts. And he was talking mostly about Afro-American. He says, what happens, when they are arrested for something, end up in jail. Can you move forward, please? Salawat. He says when these young people are sent to the prison, what happens? The normal clothes they were wearing is taken away from them. They are given the prison garments. And that clothes stay with them. However, they make sure that the shoelace and the belt is eliminated. Because that can become, means of hurting somebody else. So after a year or two, when this fellow is released from the prison, what happens to him? Now he changes to the clothes that he had before. In prison, he has been working hard. He lost some weight. And now he puts on the clothes that he came with with those clothes in the prison. But now the belt is gone and the shoelace is gone. And he has lost weight. So what happens now? It's now a baggy pants which might fall down, so he has to walk in a certain way. And the shoes doesn't have the shoelace. Just to make sure it doesn't come off. And that became a style. And that became a fashion statement. Yeah, by the looks of it, it's very natural. But think about it. Why you would want to adapt a fashion which has to do with ex-convicts? And this is the point that I have, that, there are many things which are innocent and, neutral in the Sharia. But then we have to think about the why you want to do it. Because if you do not stop right in the beginning, it can lead later on to very serious issues. And so even simple, style and fashion, these become statements in this society. For us, the example should be of a person by the name of Bishr al-Hafi. Bishr al-Hafi, Bishr is the name, Hafi means the barefooted person. Why was he barefooted all the time? He was a person of affluence. And one day, Imam Musa al-Kazim alayhi salatu wasalam was passing by the alley which had his house. And being an affluent person, he had basically what we call party, these days. People are gathered, music was going on. And so when he passed by that house, and when he reached close to the door entrance, he saw a maid came out to throw garbage outside. So Imam, the seventh Imam, stops for a moment, and he asked her that the owner of this house, your master, ahuwa hurrun am abdun? Is he a free person or is he a servant or slave? And she said, of course, he is a hurr. He's free. He's not slave of anyone. And Imam said, indeed, he is not slave of anyone. Otherwise, I wouldn't be hearing the sounds I'm hearing from his house. Because if he was abd of Allah, then I wouldn't be seeing all these things. And this maid goes back, and the master asked, what took you long coming back? And she says, there was a man passing by, and he stopped, and he asked me this question about you. Whether you are hur or abd, you are free or slave. And I said, you are free. And he said, indeed you are free. If you were abd of Allah, you wouldn't be doing all these things. That was a statement from a Ma'soom Imam. It had immediate impact on the mind and heart of Bishop. He runs outside, in order to find that person. He didn't even wait to put on his slippers or shoes. And went and found the Imam, apologized for his behavior, kissed his hand, and he said, I'm doing tawbah. I will get rid of all this haram things that I do. And as a remembrance of that day, he said, from now on, I'm not going to put any slippers or shoes on my feet. And he became so, famous for his piety that among the Sufis now he is known as one of the spiritual masters. And so that question that Imam Musa al-Kazim asked of Bushr through his maid is a question we should be asking ourselves all the time, especially when we face this kind of situation. Are we hur or we are abd of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? And if we can answer that, then I think for us it will be very easy to make these kinds of decisions in a difficult situation. Salawat. So this was the second issue. Last night we talked about rebellion against the traditions of the forefathers as one of the problematic areas of modernity. The second was the sexual revolution and its implications. The third issue that I would like to discuss tonight is the issue of this worship of the body. If you look at the Western society at the moment, the craze for physical fitness, which sometimes extend to the even indulgence in drugs and alcohol, and then a perspective of that, or a dimension, is even the issue of cosmetics and hero worship of sports figures and the movie figures. When we look at this issue, Islam doesn't say you should not be physically fit. Islam does not say that you should not get involved in sports to keep yourself fit. The problem we have is that total dedication to physical fitness at the expense of spiritual fitness. That is one of the hallmarks of the modern society at the moment. If you look at the amount of the money used for physical fitness compared to the issue of spiritual fitness, it is absolutely nothing. And so when we talk about this issue of physical fitness, yes, it is part of our deen. We have been told to do things in a way that we can keep ourselves fit for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so that I can work, for example, and provide for myself and my family. It's my religious duty, so that I can fulfill the religious obligations that I have to do on a physical level, for example. And eventually to be ready if the time comes and the imam that we are waiting for comes and says, I need you. You have to be physically fit to be part of the army of Imam Zamana Ajjalallahu Ta'ala Farjul Sharif. But then the issue is that, overemphasis on this issue at the expense of spiritual fitness is the problem that we have to, take into consideration when we are talking about forming a new Western cultural background for a Shia Muslim community in North America. Add to this the question, sometimes I get this question, what about becoming a professional player as opposed to an amateur sport? Sports has been part of human history from day one, in different formats, different styles. Again, there you will see diversity around the world. But then the way it's becoming now here in the Western world, professional sports is becoming like a religion. It is replacing this, the place of religion in this society. The commercialization of that, the overemphasis that it has, you look at the importance given to it. Even the White House, when they have to schedule the press conference for the President of the United States of America, one of the items in their checklist is to see, is there a major game going on at that time or not? Because people will be watching that and not listening to what the President of the country has to say. So it has become like, a religion for this society. Even if you look at the importance given to it, as far as finance is concerned, the professional players in 1 year make so much money that a scholar or a scientist in the United States of America would not make in his own entire lifetime. Even compared to the salary of the President of the United States of America. These are all poor people. Scientists that you have, they are poor compared to these sports figures. And so it seems that there is value being placed in a proportion which is not wise as far as Islamic value system is concerned. And so if somebody asks me, what will be the preference for me? Do I go in professional, sports or just amateur sports? I'm not giving a fatwa, not quoting any marjas fatwa, so don't say Maulana Rizvi said this is haram. But if you ask me for preference, what I know about Islamic values, and what we see the phenomenon, steeped in materialism the way it is now, where the priorities are messed up, from the Islamic point of view, the preference would go for amateur sports and not to become a professional player. Because it is becoming like a cult and a religion of its own in this society, where the stadiums are the temples, the players are the gods, the coaches are the priests of that temple, the managers are the custodians of the place, and the fans are the worshippers. Look at when the fans and the worshippers become excited with the performance of their gods, what do? Don't they raise their hands? That's their takbir. So if you really look at it in that way, on a subconscious level, it is becoming like a religion. And that is where, one area where we have to be careful in which direction we are steering the vehicle of change for our community in this part of the world. Salawat. So I'm not absolutely saying that we should not get on the vehicle of change, but not just for the sake of modernity. We have to get on that vehicle of change and steer it in the right direction of the submission to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, to please Allah, Rasul, and the Imam of our time, Ajjalallahu ta'ala farjahu sharif. We are Shias of Ali. What does Ali expect from us? Let me take you to a statement that Imam has in Nahil Balagha, part of his sayings at the end, saying number 280. Or it might be two numbers before or after. Sometimes the numberings are not exactly the same in all editions. Imam, in that statement, is talking about a companion of his who had passed away recently. And he was remembering it. Unfortunately, Imam doesn't give the name. And therefore, there is a dispute among commentators of Nahj Balagha who was the person that Imam was talking about. But he was somebody so much admired by Amir al-Mu'mineen that he says, وَكَانَ فِي مَا مَضَى أَخٌ فِي الدِّينِ, that I had a brother in faith in the past. What a privilege that Ali calls you the brother. It's one thing for us to say we are Shia of Ali. It's something else for Ali to say, I accept you as my Shia. Or to admire you as my brother. And then he says, that why was this person great in my eyes? Why did I respect him so much? And he talks about 7 or 8 qualities of this individual. One is relevant to our discussion here. But he says, وَكَانَ إِذَا بَدَأُوا عَمْرَانِ يَنْظُرُ أَيُّهُمَا أَقْرَبُ إِلَى الْحَوَى فَخَالَفَهُ. That whenever this person was faced with a situation, he didn't know what is right and what is wrong. We are not talking about black and white. If it is black and white, we know this is halal, this is haram. We know that is our duty, to go towards halal and to stay away from haram. But Imam is talking about a situation which was not black and white, but the gray area. And we quite a lot in our life, in this part of the world, are faced with gray areas. What do? This is what Ali expects from his Shia. He says the beauty of this person, the quality of this person was whenever he was faced with a situation where he had to make a choice between this side or that side, and he didn't know what was right, which was the right one. يَنْظُرُ أَيُّهُمَا أَقْرَبُ إِلَى الْحَوَى. He will look at his own heart and he will say which one of these two options I like. And once he identifies the one that he likes, he goes the opposite way, just to make sure that what he's doing is not really just going with his will and his own desires. And this is how Ali is praising this person. And so this is what we have to do, that sometimes things might look just, innocent. But we have to look at, the reason behind it. Why is it being done? And especially if it's a gray area, this is the criteria that Ali is showing to us. Look at your heart. If this is something that you desire, then you choose the option which is the opposite of that. Salawat on it. بات ہو رہی تھی کہ اس زمانے میں اسلام کو کس طرح سے ہم اپنے لیے ریلیونٹ بنائیں اس ماحول میں. اور کل اور آج کی گفتگو ہماری اس جدید دور کی بات تھی. اس میں جو مشکلات ہیں اس کی طرف ہم نے اشارہ کیا ہے تاکہ ہماری نظر رہے ان باتوں پر، اور جب فیصلہ کرنے کا وقت آئے اپنے بارے میں، اپنی فیملی کے بارے میں، اپنے بچوں کے بارے میں، تو کم سے کم ہمارا ڈیسیژن اور فیصلہ جو ہے صحیح ہو. اس لیے کہ بات یہ ہو رہی ہے کہ ہمیں اس سوسائٹی میں اسپیشلی ماں باپ کے لیے اپنے ویلیوز اور اپنے اقدار کو بعد والی نسل تک منتقل کرنا ہے. We have to transform, move these values from ourselves to the next generation. آسان نہیں ہے، قطعاً آسان نہیں ہے، لیکن ہمیں کوشش کرنی ہے، ورنہ ہماری ہجرت یہاں جو ہے وہ حرام ہو جائے گی. ہمیں واپس جانا ہوگا یا کہیں اور جانا ہوگا جہاں ہم عمل کر سکیں. اور یہ جو جنریشن گیپ کی جو بات ہوتی ہے یہی ہوتی ہے کہ ماں باپ اگر اپنے ویلیوز کو بعد والی جنریشن تک منتقل نہ کریں. ماں باپ کوشش کرتے ہیں، پورا وقت لگاتے ہیں کمانے میں، کس کے لیے؟ اپنے اولاد کے لیے. لیکن وہ محنت کرنا اور وہ کمانا کیا ہے کہ جہاں صرف آپ نے ان کے مٹیریل ویل بینگ کے لیے کام کیا ہے، انہیں ٹائم نہیں دیا. وقت وہ آتا ہے کہ فزیکلی، مٹیریلی، ایکیڈیمک کے لحاظ سے وہ ٹھیک ٹھاک ہو گئے ہیں، لیکن جب دین کی بات ہوتی ہے آپ نے دیکھا ہم نے ٹائم نہیں دیا. ہم نے چھوڑ دیا مدرسے پر 3 hours a week. نہیں، وہ کچھ نہیں ہے. ایکچوئل ذمہ داری ماں باپ کی ہوتی ہے. In madrasa they can only learn Islam. It is at home that they can live Islam. تو صرف مدرسہ بھیجنے سے کچھ نہیں ہوتا. مدرسے جو سیکھتے ہیں اس کو امپلیمنٹ کرنا گھر کے اندر ایکچوئل معاملہ ہے. اسی کے بعد وہ ویلیوز جاتی ہیں نیکسٹ جنریشن میں. ایک بہت ہی افسوسناک مثال آپ کو ہم دیں امریکہ کی، کینیڈا کی نہیں، الحمدللہ. ایک مولانا صاحب بتا رہے تھے ان کی کمیونٹی میں ایک سچویشن آئی جہاں انہیں جا کے کاؤنسلنگ کرنی پڑی. محرم کا زمانہ تھا، جھگڑا تھا باپ اور بیٹی میں. بیٹی جو ہے گریڈ 12 میں تھی. جھگڑا کس بات پہ تھا کہ وہ ہائی اسکول میں پروم نائٹ جو ہے عاشور کے قریب پڑ رہی. بیٹی جانا چاہ رہی ہے، باپ کہہ رہا ہے کہ نہیں، اولاً یہ غلط بھی ہے اور پھر محرم اشرا ہے یہ. لیکن جو بات تکلیف والی ہے وہ الفاظ جو ایکسچینج ہوئے ہیں. بیٹی باپ سے کہتی ہے کہ بابا آپ کا عاشورہ ہر سال آتا ہے، میری پروم نائٹ زندگی میں ایک بار. وہ ورڈز دیکھیں، آپ کا عاشورہ، یور عاشورہ. مطلب یہ ہے کہ اس ماں باپ نے بیٹی کو یہ نہیں سکھایا ہے کہ عاشورہ صرف ہمارا نہیں ہے، تمہارا بھی. چوائس آف ورڈز جو ہیں وہی سوچنے کی بات ہے. بہت تکلیف کی بات ہے یہ کہ جہاں بچہ آپ سے کہے یور عاشورہ، یعنی اس کا عاشورہ نہیں ہے. اینڈ دیٹ از دا ریئل جنریشن گیپ کی بات ہو. تو اس ماحول میں تو ہم آئے ہیں، لیکن ہمیں کوشش کرنی ہے. ان شبوں میں ہم کربلا کے جن جوان شہداء کا ذکر کرتے ہیں، کل بھی ہم نے کہا تھا ان کی قربانی کے درمیان کے پیچھے ماں کا کردار ہے، ماں کی محنت. آگے یہ ہیں، لیکن ان کے سوچ کو اگر آپ دیکھیں، جناب قاسم کی عظمت صرف قاسم کی نہیں ہے، بلکہ یہ جناب ام فروہ کی تربیت کا نتیجہ ہے. جہاں ہم قاسم کو یاد کرتے ہیں، ہمیں تعریف کرنی ہوگی جناب ام فروہ. وہ خیالات دیکھیں، ان کے سوچ کو دیکھیں. جب شب عاشور امام حسین علیہ السلام نے جب بیعت کو اٹھا لیا، اور جب جتنے وہاں اصحاب اور اہل بیت والے تھے سب نے کہا کہ نہیں، ہم آپ کو چھوڑ کے نہیں جائیں گے، تو اس کے بعد امام نے ایک لحاظ سے بشارت دی ہے کہ تم سب کے سب جو ہے شہداء کی فہرست میں شامل ہو. تم اس وقت جناب قاسم غالباً اپنی کمسنی کو دیکھتے ہوئے، نوجوان بچہ ہے، 13-14 سال کا سن کچھ نہیں ہے، سن کو دیکھتے ہوئے دماغ میں سوال ہوا کہ کیا اس شہداء میں ہم بھی شامل ہیں کہ نہیں. امام حسین علیہ السلام نے قاسم کے اس سوال کو دیکھا، یقیناً بھائی کی محبت یاد آ گئی. یہ وہ بچہ تھا کہ جو بابا کے شہادت میں 3 یا 4 سال، یہ یتیم بچہ ہے جس کی پرورش خود امام حسین علیہ السلام نے کی. امام نے اس کے چہرے کی طرف دیکھا اور ایک سوال کیا، کیف الموت عندک، اے قاسم یہ بتاؤ تمہارے ذہن میں موت کا تصور کیا ہے. یہ کوئی اسائنمنٹ نہیں ملا ہے کہ ہم گھر جائیں گے، ماں باپ سے پوچھیں گے، کوئی پروجیکٹ بنائیں گے. نہیں، سوال فوراً ہوا ہے، جواب فوراً چاہیے. اور صحیح فوراً جواب اسی وقت آتا ہے کہ جب ماں باپ نے تربیت وہ دی ہو کہ سوال ہو اور جواب فوراً آئے. کم سنی میں جو جواب دیا ہے تا قیامت زندہ رہے گا وہ جواب. قاسم کہتے ہیں احلی من العسل، کہ چچا جان میرے لیے شہد سے بھی زیادہ شیرین ہے. کم سنی کو دیکھیں، اس تصور کو دیکھیں موت کا، اور اسے ملانا شہد کی شیرینی کے ساتھ. اور یہی وجہ ہے کہ آپ دیکھیں کتنی محبت کرتے تھے امام حسین علیہ السلام جناب قاسم سے، کہ دوسرے دن جب اصحاب کے شہادت کے بعد بنو ہاشم کی شہادت کی نوبت آتی ہے، اور یکے بعد دیگرے جب اپنی قربانی پیش کی ہے، جناب قاسم بھی آتے ہیں، چچا سے اجازت مانگتے ہیں. امام نے انکار پر انکار کیا ہے، اسی لیے کہ اس کو ایک یتیم کی طور پہ پالا ہے. بچہ ہمارا نہیں ہے، بھائی کا ہے، امانت ہے. آخر میں اتنا اصرار کرتے ہیں کہ مولا کے قدموں پہ گر جاتے ہیں. امام حسین علیہ السلام ایک روایت کے مطابق اپنے گلے سے لگاتے ہیں، اور اس کے بعد امام حسین اور قاسم دونوں فجعل یبکیان حتی غشی علیہما، گلے سے مل کے ایک دوسرے سے اتنا روئے ہیں کہ غشی کا عالم طاری ہو جاتا ہے. آخر میں مولا نے کہا کہ قاسم جا کے ماں سے اجازت لے لو. جاتے ہیں خیمے میں، کس طرح سے ماں نے بیٹے کو الوداع کیا ہوگا اس کا منظر کوئی نہیں سمجھ سکتا ہے، نہ بیان کر سکتا ہے. یقیناً ماں جو ہیں وہی جانتی ہیں. لیکن قاسم کو رخصت کیا، امام نے قاسم کو گھوڑے پر بٹھایا اور سر پر ایک عمامہ پہنایا اور الوداع کر دیا. حمید بن مسلم جو سنی دشمن فوج کا رپورٹر تھا، اس کا بیان ہے کہ ہم نے دیکھا کہ ایک نوجوان آ رہا ہے گھوڑے پر جس کا چہرہ چاند کی طرح تھا، لیکن کمسنی کا وہ عالم تھا کہ اس کے پیر جو ہے گھوڑے کے رکاب پہ نہیں پہنچ رہے تھے. اور وہ آتا ہے، وہ حملہ کرتا ہے، اپنا رجس پڑھتا ہے، اپنا تعارف کرتا ہے. تقریباً 25 یزیدیوں کو فی النار کرنے کے بعد ایک ملعون آگے بڑھتا ہے، اس طرح سے وار کرتا ہے کہ جناب قاسم اپنے کو گھوڑے پر سنبھال نہ سکے، گھوڑے سے زمین پر آتے ہیں. گھوڑے پر زمین پہ آنا تھا کہ بلند آواز میں آواز دیتے ہیں، یا اماں ہو ادرکنی، اے چچا جان میری مدد کو پہنچیے. عزادار حسین، حسین کے دل میں وہ محبت تھی، اپنی تلوار کو نکالتے ہیں اور یزیدی لشکر پر حملہ کر دیتے ہیں. اس حملے کے اثر میں گھوڑے مشرق سے مغرب کی طرف دوڑے ہیں. جناب قاسم تک جب حسین پہنچے ہیں کافی دیر ہو چکی تھی. جب گرد و غبار بیٹھا ہے، امام جب قاسم کے پاس آئے دیکھتے ہیں بہت دیر ہو چکی ہے، بس ایک جملہ کہتے ہیں، عز واللہ علی عمیک ان تدعوه فلا یجیبک. تیرے چچا کے لیے یہ بہت بڑا صدمہ ہے، تم نے مدد کے لیے پکارا لیکن وہ جواب نہ دے سکا، اور جب آیا تو بہت دیر ہو چکی تھی. عزاداران حسین قاسم کی لاش کو اٹھایا. حمید بن مسلم کی روایت کے مطابق سینہ قاسم کا حسین کے سینے سے لگا ہوا تھا، لیکن پیر جو ہے زمین پر خط کھینچتے ہوئے چلے جا رہے تھے. عزاداران حسین یہ کیا ماجرا تھا؟ جب لاش کو جا کے خیمے کے سامنے رکھا ہے، فروہ کی جب نظر جاتی ہے پوچھتی ہے، مولا میرے بیٹے کو کیا ہوا؟ عزاداران حسین جب یہ گھوڑے دوڑے ہیں تو اس گھوڑوں کے دوڑنے کے درمیان میں جناب قاسم کا لاشا زندگی کے زمانے میں پامال ہو. لا لعنت اللہ علی القوم الظالمین. سیعلم الذین ظلموا ای منقلب ینقلبون. ماتم حسین.